Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MT4MH studios, where we spread our love and we share our ketogenic lifestyles. Today, we sit down with Dave Mack, a YouTube creator and advocate for the zero carb carnivore lifestyle. After a stroke in early life, battling alcoholism, and struggling with sugar addiction, Dave found healing through the carnivore diet. In this interview, we discuss his journey from a plant based diet to a zero carb lifestyle, how he overcame addiction, what a day of eating looks like, and how his diet has changed over time. We also dive into his thoughts on coffee consumption, what he's learned from interviewing guests on his channel, and whether his family has embraced this lifestyle. Dave, thanks for being here. How are you today?
I'm excellent. Thank you so much for having me on, Stephen.
It's my pleasure. I'm still very grateful that you had me on your show last week. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it was well received. Yeah, everyone enjoyed watching it.
It was fun participating in the comments with all the viewers on there. And I picked up quite a few subscribers of my own from your viewers. It's been great.
Awesome.
So, how about we start out with a brief intro into your journey to carnivore?
Sure. So it happened mid 2022. I went to my doctor and he had some bad news for me. He told me I needed to stop drinking and I needed to do something about the pre-diabetes that I now had. I knew I had definitely the alcohol problem, but the pre-diabetes was a bit of a shock. The doctor wanted to put me on some medication to deal with the alcohol. I didn't like that idea. I've never been a fan of medications. I talked to the doctor and asked him to give me a couple of weeks to try and fix it myself. That was the beginnings of me finding carnivore.
Very similar story that I've heard from lots of other people. For me, it
Mm.
was similar too. I was pre diabetic, and that was the reason that I lowered my carbs to lose some weight and try to avoid taking medication.
The medication can be a big motivator for people because I think people, speaking for myself, you get put on medications from being a child, for all sorts of different things, whether it's skin issues or allergies or whatever it is. You very quickly realize that most of the things make you feel worse and don't really help. So by the time I was in my late 40s, when a doctor says we need to put you on some medication, it's like, yeah, there's probably a better way of handling this.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that echoes my experience with psychiatric medicines is that they work somewhat some of the time for some of the people, which is just not good enough.
Mm, definitely.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into some of your key challenges, like the stroke you had earlier, the alcoholism or the sugar addiction.
Sure. With the stroke, I was 17. I went to sleep on October 18, woke up on October 19, and yeah, had a stroke. In my sleep, I'd had a subarachnoid hemorrhage, which is basically an aneurysm on your basilar artery and your head bursts. The blood rushed into my brain. I was very lucky that it clotted quickly, so I was able to wake up. But had my blood been a little bit thinner, that would have been it. I wouldn't have woken up. And I got up the next day. I was already working full time as a 17-year-old, so I got up the next day, thought, oh, I feel pretty bad, but just put it down to being a virus. It kind of felt a little bit like being hungover. So I got ready for work, went to work, and then throughout the next couple of hours, my right side just got weaker and weaker and weaker. And, to the point that I realized something's wrong. This is not a virus. That had been an issue for me. Everything got fixed up. For 30 odd years, that's been an issue for me because I've had weakness on my right side. I've had a limp on my right side. One of the great things when I eventually went carnivore was things started to improve. My right side started getting stronger. My limp improved. It continues to get marginally better. I'm always going to have a limp. I'm always going to be, my left side is always going to be now my stronger side, but it does get better day by day. Part of having had that stroke and dealing with the effects of it for over 30 years was a bit of depression, and that depression led to drinking alcohol. and also eating. And so it was never a strong depression, but it was a depression that was fueled by shyness and feeling like I was kind of on the outer because I had these physical challenges and that kind of thing. Yeah, so that led me to alcohol and food, and the abuse of the alcohol and food just got worse and worse and worse as time went on. Then the doctor said one day, "You got to do something about this, or when you come back in a year's time, it's going to be much, much worse."
Can you tell us what your diet was like when you were a kid, and then what was it like at the time you went to the doctor? What kind of things were you eating?
When I was a kid, my diet was okay. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. So I would have candy and ice creams and stuff off and on. But as far as eating, 3 square meals every day, it was fine. It was the meat and veg for dinner all the time. Mum made sure we had um, good food for dinner. Breakfast, it was kind of, toast. Like I think in the States you have Wonder White, um, that kind of bread with butter or spreadable cheese or something like that in the morning.
How about cinnamon? Did
And
you do cinnamon toast?
never did cinnamon toast.
We would do the bread with
Yeah.
butter and put cinnamon on it. Yeah, that was our thing.
Okay. Yeah. In Australia, one of the common things we put on toast is Vegemite. So that's kind of more savory kind of beef extract. So lunch would be, some junk from the cafeteria, the school cafeteria, be like a meat pie or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't compared to what the kids are eating these days, it wasn't bad. In the last few years, things really went off the rails. I was working a job where I was teaching English, and I was working kind of lunchtime through to 9 p.m., 10 p.m. at night. And I was working far away from home, so it was a long train trip and then a long walk as well. I would be doing my last or second last class of the evening, and I would just be thinking to myself, I cannot deal with any more of this. I'm like, I am done for the day. And the only thing that would kind of make me feel good or give me some hope is just thinking, it's okay. In an hour or so, this will be done, and you'll be able to have a beer on the train on the way home. And so my dinner those days was sitting on the train with a beer, a half-liter can of beer, some junk that I bought from the convenience store, ice cream, potato chips, fried something, just convenience store food. It was terrible, and that just went on. That was a year, 2 years worth of, you know, so things were getting really bad.
It's no wonder that you had issues when you went to the doctor,
Yeah.
right?
So I think probably what by the following year, if I'd kept up the like it wouldn't have been pre-diabetes anymore. In a year, it would have been I would have been diabetic.
And as terrible as that diet sounds for your health, who wouldn't love it? Sounds delicious. Drinking beer, eating fried foods and ice cream and all the stuff that we love.
And when you get into the habit of doing that at the same time every day for the same reason every day, it feels so comfortable.
Yes, I'm glad you said the word comfortable because when you were describing the feeling of the relief that you would have just thinking about having the beer later made you feel better. It's that comfort. I used marijuana for many years and I had that same feeling. It was as if the marijuana was my best friend. And I'd be at, say, family's house for a holiday and I had to leave my best friend at home. And it would give me comfort and help me get through those times. Like, at least I know when I get home, I can smoke and I can feel better again. It's the same exact thing.
Right. Yeah. I think I don't know. I think there's a part of your mind, like this isn't good. I shouldn't be doing this. But, the overwhelming energy, brain energy you've got is saying, no, this is fine. Don't worry about it. You can give this up anytime.
So that's what your diet was like when you went to the doctor? That's where you left off before you saw the doctor?
Yeah. So that's basically where it was when I went to the doctor. And so when he said we need to fix these things, I knew that I had an opportunity because I knew it was so bad that, you know, any improvement could make a difference. And so at that stage, I knew that keto or low carb, whatever you want to call it, is something that would give me self control. I'd done Atkins keto on and off for over 20 years at this point, and so the one thing that I knew is that self control was a big thing once I got carbs out of my diet. And so I left there thinking, okay, well, what am I going to do? Okay, well, the best thing I can do is get rid of carbs altogether, and or minimize them as much as possible. Just get on vegetables. So I just decided, okay, well, I'll go back and see the doctor in a few weeks and talk to him. I got down to, it would have been 20 or 30 grams of carbs a day. I was able to, through a combination of doing this low carb approach and also changing the way I did things throughout the day to avoid my triggers, I was able to, get off the alcohol and get off the sugar.
And that sounds like it was mostly a plant-based thing. You weren't doing meat or carnivore at that point?
No, so like at this point, so this was me switching over to, basically a meat-based keto.
Okay, gotcha.
So yeah, yeah. So I just got but see the problem is I went to the keto that I knew, and the keto that I knew was still the lean meats and that kind of thing. But it did help me get off the alcohol, get off the sugar.
That's a very powerful message for people to hear,
Hmm.
that keto can be that powerful. For most people, they need to increase their fat and have a higher fat version, but you were doing a lower fat with lean meat, and it still helped you get off the alcohol. That's how powerful keto can be.
Yeah, it's just the I've always, since the first time I did Atkins, I've always known that there's this, it's almost like a switch inside me that if I get rid of the sugar, if I get rid of all the processed garbage, I'll just have this, like, it just elevates the self-control to this other level. It's crazy.
When I was on your show, I spoke about that demon in me, and that demon represents that lack of control. The demon takes control of me
Mm.
and makes me eat things and do things I don't wanna do, but it's the same for me, and the reason I do that 90-10 diet that I do, the HFBO, is because the higher I get, the more and more control I have. It's the way I wanna live. I want that demon to be asleep. I wanna have as much control as possible.
Yeah, and actually the demon is a great way of describing it because I know if I go back even for a second, then it's coming back out.
Yeah, he's right around the corner. He's just waiting for you to slip up. Do you remember what your transition was like? Did you suffer any detox symptoms or challenges when you first changed your diet?
I was okay with going on to keto because I've done it so regularly over the last 20 years. And so it was just, this was a case of, okay, well, I'll try again. So I didn't suffer any of the major issues. But what did happen and what eventually made me find carnivore is that a couple of weeks in, I was experiencing some pretty bad diarrhea, and it was happening immediately after eating. And that made me start doing more research because at this stage I'm 100% on my own. I've kind of, I'm maybe watching some kind of keto channel here and there, but basically I'm on my own. I started to look into doing Google searches and YouTube searches about diarrhea, keto, that kind of thing. And I found a video by Ken Berry. And in the video, he was talking about how some vegetables can have an irritating effect on the gut and cause diarrhea, that kind of thing. And he singled out some of the things that I was eating, and they were like red peppers and yellow peppers and things like that, like these nightshades that I was eating because like I was like, well, I've got to get my vitamin C. So I was eating these things. Of course, it was causing irritation. I'm in the bathroom. And so after watching this video, I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to cut them out and see how I go. So I cut them out, the problem stopped, and I've been carnivore ever since.
That is another very powerful message that I want people to hear. These food items are not going to affect everybody in the same way, but there's a very good chance that they are affecting us. There are certain things for me, like garlic and onions, that I ate, up until I was 43 years old. I probably ate every day. If I had onions or garlic now, it would destroy me. I've had it
Mm.
since I changed my diet. I've had those things, and the pain and the gas and everything, it destroys me. And I would have no idea until I eliminated it.
Yeah, I love garlic, but it doesn't love me.
Exactly. I love a lot of these things, but they don't love us back. They do not.
Yeah, so that's been, I guess, how long? That would be 27 months now.
That's amazing.
And yeah, I can't imagine going back. Once you've been doing this for a couple of months, the way you look at processed food completely changes. In the before times, I would be walking past some department store in Japan, and like the B1 level of the department store is always the food section. So it's like beautiful cakes and beautiful desserts and all this kind of thing that they're selling down there. And I'd walk past and I'd just be looking at these things, and my mouth would be watering, and I'd be like, how can I not go in there and buy something? Or. And I'll just get something for my daughter, and then I've got an excuse to buy it for me too, and all that kind of thing. And now when I walk past there, I've just got no feeling at all for this stuff. That connection's been completely broken.
Isn't that so amazing the way that feels?
It's great, and the feeling of empowerment that you have is just it's above anything else. I kind of look at it like I was so weak before. Everything would trigger me. Everything had a hold of me. And now I feel like I've got that power back. I'm in control, and I'm not at the whim of every little thing that comes across my path. Like if a commercial comes on YouTube while I'm watching it, I'm not like, I've got to eat one of those things now.
I know exactly what you mean. When I first changed my diet, I struggled like you, where I would still walk through the store, and when I first started eating just meat, I would wanna go to the store just because I would wanna see the items, even though I had no intention of buying them. I just wanted to see them. I still had a love affair with all the things that I ate, and it's gotten
Mm,
to the point now where I don't even really have a need to go for the store. My freezer is stocked with meat and fat. I don't even wanna go to the store anymore. There's nothing there for me. There's that one little section that has a little bit of beef. It's this big in the aisle for the whole entire store, and that's all I'm really interested in.
yeah, yeah. But, you're right when you talk about it as being a demon. When I think about I started smoking when I was 15 years old. Food and smoking and alcohol, it's all the same thing to me. And it's all the same thing to my brain anyway. And I would always feel jealous of the people that could just have one cigarette and that was it. Or one drink or half a drink and then just leave it. Or, they would have the box of 6 donuts. They would have a donut and share the rest, or leave the rest of the donuts for later or something, and it's like, how can they do that? How it's impossible. I've one cigarette, then I can't like, as a smoker, that first cigarette of the day is amazing because you've actually had sleep where your body has been able to detox from all the chemicals and stuff, like, so that when you have that first one, it's like this rush, you know? So that first cigarette was always the best one. But then I could never go, okay, well, I'm just going to leave it for an hour or 2 hours or whatever, and then have another cigarette that I'm going to kind of enjoy. It's like, I've got to chase that rush again. And so it's 10 minutes later, I've got another one in my hand, you know?
I know exactly what you mean. I've dealt with the same thing with nicotine, and I can't tell you how many times I had a cigarette and I asked myself, why do I have this in my hand lit right now? I don't even want this thing. And I'm like a
Mm.
frugal guy. I don't want to waste money. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to smoke a little bit of it because I don't want to just throw it out. But that person that you described is my wife. She's the one who will she'll buy the little Ben and Jerry's ice cream. To me, that's like barely a serving. That's like a couple of scoops. I'm done. And that'll last her a week. She gets her coffee drinks at Dunkin' Donuts. They're not these sugary treats anymore, but they used to be these sugary treats, and she would drink it over the course of a week, and to me, that's like a 10-minute thing, done and gone, and I'm the type where if I can't have that whole container of ice cream or I can't have the whole coffee, I don't even want it. I don't want that little sip or that little spoon because it's just not enough to satisfy me.
Yeah, it's almost like if you can only have that one sip, that's gonna set you off on this quest to find more stuff that can actually satisfy you, you know? It's like and then, it feels like you're almost getting into this mental hypoglycemic state or something where it's like, "I've gotta find something, I've gotta get something."
Exactly, yeah.
So, yeah, addiction addiction's a nightmare,
It is. But for you and for me too, we have both been able to put our demons to sleep with the power of a ketogenic and carnivore diet.
right?
It's
Yeah,
amazing. And your depression has lifted, so your mood has improved, your stroke symptoms have improved. It's
yeah.
amazing what it can do for us, and all the different guests I've had on have all explained, in various ways how the diet has helped them.
The biggest change for me actually, I mean, these are all big things, but the biggest thing improving for me was the arthritis going from my left knee. So you can imagine actually what I would have looked like walking before. So I'd had pretty bad arthritis for a couple of years and limping on my right side. And so I like walking, it was like so laborious to walk anywhere. Just changing my diet, improving the strength and the balance on my right side, and then all of a sudden the arthritis just going, "Okay, well, I'm not here anymore." It was great. The issue is I have tried to kind of introduce a couple of things at times, and, the a twinge of the arthritis starts to come back almost immediately.
That's common for myself and for a lot of other people, and that's how I've gotten to the point that I eat beef only. From all the days of heavy weightlifting, I have a problem in my left hip, and I have a problem on my lower right back from deadlifting, I think. Right now, I don't know that they're there, but if I eat certain food items, I will feel them, and it's usually right away, within 24 hours, I will feel them, and it's my
Mm,
biggest offenders are wheat and gluten, dairy. I've discovered that cocoa, anything with cocoa, unfortunately, because I love chocolate and I love cocoa butter, which is 100% fat, and because I've eat such a high fat diet, I used to consume a lot of cocoa, but that will bother me too, so now that I've cut it out and then I add it back in, I will get pain in my hip, and the pain I get is like I describe it like a deep bone pain, not like where
mm.
if your muscles get sore from working out, you can massage them, you could identify where you're sore, you could maybe relieve some of it. This is like deep in my bones and I can't even tell exactly where it's coming from. It just aches and it hurts and it takes days to go away.
This is one of the good things about eating this way, is that you can identify problems like that so easily, and they also act as good kind of guardrails because it's like, if you're ever at risk of kind of falling off the wagon, it's like just one taste of the stuff can bring the pain back, and it's like, "Ah, I remember what this was like. Okay, yeah, I just can't do it. I've gotta stay off this stuff."
Exactly. I like to describe it as my internal radar has been sharpened. Like in the old days, when I was doing my old diet, I didn't have any radar at all. I had no idea what things were bothering me. But then as I've gone through this journey, I've been turning up the dial on my radar, and my radar has gotten really, really sensitive and it can pick up the littlest thing. I'm to the point now where if I'm beef only for a while and I eat some chicken or I eat some pork, it's conventionally raised. They're not necessarily healthy animals and it'll bother me enough that I don't want it. Like if I eat beef and I feel perfect in the digestion and everything, I eat chicken, I might burp, I might get gassy from it, I might poop a little extra. that's enough for me where it's like, no, I don't really I might have it as a treat sometimes, but I want the beef and I want as close to perfect as I can get. All right, let's talk about what your diet looks like. Tell us what a typical day of eating looks like, your meals,
It's
and I wanna know about, like, how many times a day you eat. Do you do any fasting, intermittent fasting, anything like that?
Yeah, so it's really, really simple. Um, I eat once a day, and typically about 7 o'clock in the morning. And that's just about 600 grams or half a pound of ground beef and 8 to 10 eggs scrambled up and maybe a little bit of butter on the top, depending on how I feel. And because of the way ground beef is prepared in Japan, it's basically a 60-40 split. So 60% of it is beef, 40% of it is pork.
I've never heard that, and they what do they call it? Is it called mince, or what do they call it there?
Yeah, they just call it mince. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, that does me all day. And honestly, I think that's one of the coolest things about eating this way is that I can just eat one time and then forget about food. My productivity has improved so much. Before I would have been like 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, I would have eaten breakfast. And then I would spend the next 2 or 3 hours thinking, "What am I gonna eat at 10 o'clock?" And then so I've been to Starbucks and I've had a coffee and a some kind of chocolate chip thing, and, then I'd be thinking, "What am I gonna have for lunch? Then what am I gonna have for an afternoon snack? Then what am I gonna have for dinner? Then what am I gonna have before I go to bed?" It just never ends, and you're constantly thinking about food, and so your work suffers, your productivity suffers, relationships suffer because, you've always got that little, like a monkey on your back going, "Come on, what's next? What's next? What's next?"
And most people wouldn't even know they have that monkey because it's just a part of our normal lives, and for a lot of people, it represents the comfort we were talking about. 'Cause you enjoy
Mhm.
your food, it's fun, and people enjoy it,
Yeah,
wanna think about it all day. So if you told somebody, "Change your diet, and maybe in a couple of months, you're only gonna be eating once a day," there's a lot of people out there who'd be like, "Well, you're crazy, I don't wanna do that. I don't wanna eat just once a day." And many people are not gonna wanna eat the same thing every day because it sounds so boring until you do
yeah,
it, and you love it, just like me. I eat once a day, almost every day, it's once a day. Sometimes I do twice. I've been incorporating some planned fasting, so on the day before a fast, I might eat twice, and I might eat a little bit later in the day, but for me, it's the same thing. It's a pile of fat and a pile of meat, and I love every bite of every meal.
yeah. But, yeah, like you say, if you tell someone, "Yeah, try this for a couple of months and you'll never look back," you'll always, you'll be happy, you'll be calm, you won't be thinking about food, you won't even want it. They'll be just shaking their head thinking, "You're crazy." And then as you try and explain more, then they start to think, "You're one of these conspiracy theorists." And, like, there's just you can't people have got to find it on their own, I think.
That's true. Yeah. So, tell us where you stand with coffee.
At this point, I'm, off the coffee. It's been, I wanna say 6 months, but I don't think it's been that long. I can't remember the exact date. I have to go back and look at the video I made at the time. I was a heavy coffee drinker, and like the processed food and the alcohol, I've tried many, many times to get off coffee, and some have been successful. But, I keep going back to it, and I think when I started carnivore and I'd basically given everything up, coffee probably got a little bit worse for me as an addiction because it was like, "Well, this is all I've got left. I'm gonna enjoy this now." I always knew it was bad because it's affecting my sleep, because when I've tried to give it up, I can't keep my eyes open unless I'm actually doing something, and I'm up and walking around. If I'm just sitting at my desk looking at something on the computer, I'll just be like, "Whew." So I knew from just the few times I've tried to give it up that I do eventually need to. And so this time it I just got to the point where it's like my body was saying, "No, you can do this. You can give this up. You don't need this." And so, yeah, it's been 4 or 5 months.
It's great talking to you because it's almost like I'm talking to myself. Everything you say is like, "Yeah, I know exactly what you mean." I had such a love-hate relationship with coffee for so many years, and once I changed my diet, it was the only thing I had left, and I was still trying to eat high fat, and so I was doing the bulletproof coffee with butter and coconut oil and all that stuff, and I justified it like, "Well, it's fat, it's good for me," and you're kinda using it in place of food, and I was trying to do some fasting in there too, so I would drink my bulletproof coffee all throughout the day, and then I eat my food at night, but I'm like you, and I don't regulate it. And, a cup today, 2 cups tomorrow, next week I'm drinking it all day, and then I'm having coffee instead of food, and I just can't control it anymore. And it
Mm,
causes sleep issues. And with me, a big problem is the mood and irritability can be a big one. It's like a Russian roulette. I could drink coffee 5 days in a row and be fine. Then the sixth day, for whatever reason, I have a cup of coffee, and now I'm a jerk and I'm yelling and screaming. And that's the part I wanted to get off, but it was really, really difficult. It was probably more
right.
difficult than quitting nicotine.
It's funny you mentioned nicotine because my relationship with coffee was almost identical that, it was with cigarettes. So I mentioned before, like, I would wake up and I would have that first cigarette and it would feel amazing because basically my body had detoxed from it, right? Coffee was exactly the same. That first coffee was like, "This is amazing. This is good," and you spend the rest of the day chasing that feeling again, and no other coffee during the day tastes the same again, and it actually starts to taste kinda, it's kinda naff, but now I'm in the habit of doing it, so I've still gotta have one?
That amazing feeling that you're describing there is what I experienced in the past couple of years when I would be off coffee for a while. I'd be off it for 6 months or a year, and it didn't even have to be coffee. It may be we hosted people at the house and there's unsweetened iced tea, and I drink a big glass of that, and then I get that caffeine buzz. It's like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing. I This is what I needed. I need caffeine in my life." And you feel amazing the first day, and then I'm going through the bottle over the next couple of days, like, well, where's that great feeling I had? All I'm feeling now is I want more, and I feel irritable. So what's the point?
Right. Yeah.
Now I want to start talking about your YouTube channel. So you've got
Mm.
like over 77,000 subscribers. Your channel is huge. Do you have any idea how many people you've interviewed?
About 700.
Wow.
I think, like, the number I have in my kind of interview playlist is a little bit higher than that, but part of the reason for that is because 'cause I've interviewed, some people more than once, and I've got some clips of particular parts of interviews as like, kind of clip shorts there and stuff like that, so but I think it's about 700 now.
And you churn out a lot of content. I think the day you put out my show, you may have had 1 or maybe even 2 others come out on that same day. I was surprised to see how quickly you're putting out shows.
At the moment, I have the benefit of a little bit more free time than I would normally have. At this point, I'm just trying to get as many interviews out as I can because I know there's gonna come this point where I need to, use my time in other ways, and that means that it's gonna go from 3 interviews a day to 1 every couple of days or something, so I need to, just get them out while I can.
Well, you're doing an amazing job with the channel, and I was shocked that when the show dropped, like, within 2 hours, it had, like, thousands of views, and I couldn't believe the amount of comments and just the amazing amount of viewership that you have on your channel. You should be very proud of the job you're doing.
Ah, cheers. Yeah, I I mean, I still kind of shake my head at it as well, and, when I get comments from people and it's I never thought I would ever be in a situation where I could put a video on YouTube and, yeah, instantly there would be people watching it. It's been amazing.
It really is, and I said in the beginning that I picked up a whole bunch of subscribers on my channel. It was a whole
Mm.
huge wave of them, and then from interacting with people in the comments and people hearing about my Facebook group blew up too. I had just started a couple weeks ago, and there was only like a dozen people in there. We're up to 75, and they're all like, it's to the point where I'm not the only one interacting with everybody. They're all interacting with each other. It's like a legit group now, and it's all really thanks to you and your followers.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great that the group's growing too.
Yeah, it's amazing. Can you give us some of the maybe some of the key things or the prominent things you've learned from your guests? What are the things that stick out in your mind?
Honestly, over the time, there's so many amazing stories I've heard over the time, but the thing that kind of has stuck out to me most is firstly, every time you kind of fall off the wagon or fail in some way, you should never beat yourself up about it. You need to just dust yourself off and say, "Okay, well, it's that was an experience, but I need to get back on the wagon," right? Because this happened for me too over the years, but, what from my interviews, what I've realized is this is what happens with everyone. They fall off the wagon, they beat themselves up, and then they don't, and because they've beat themselves up and they've shamed themselves so much and they've basically called themselves a loser or whatever, then they've just given themselves all the non-motivation they need to not go back on the wagon. And they've just said to themselves, "You're useless. That's it. We may as well eat the Krispy Kreme donuts tomorrow, or tonight, or as soon as we can get to the store." Beating yourself up doesn't work. Just get back on the wagon and try again. So I think that's the thing that's become clearest to me, because I always thought that was just me, but it's actually nearly everyone. I think that's the biggest lesson.
That is a great lesson to get out there. Just because you messed up, don't go and make a bad thing worse. You messed up, you can put it
Mm.
in the interview. Are you familiar with the Rocky movies?
Vaguely. I haven't actually sat down and watched any of them, but yeah.
So there he gives a speech in one of the movies where he talks about life and comparing it to boxing, and it's not about how hard you can hit, it's about how hard you can take a hit, and if you get back up and keep trying,
Mhm.
and then in his funny way of saying things, he says, "That's how winning is done." And I use that winning is done line a lot for people, but he's right. There's a lot of truth to that. You gotta get up, and it's not about that you got knocked down. It's about getting up and living another day to fight.
Yeah. And, you know, everyone's like this. I think it's just a human nature thing, right? When you see, being on YouTube, you see some people kind of fall off very publicly. And the thing is, everyone around them is like rooting for them. They're all like, "Come on, just get back on. You can do it." But for them as an individual, they're thinking, "No, this is not gonna work. I'm useless. I'm useless. I'm useless." But we're all out there as supporters. But, when it happens to us individually, you've really got to fight back against those mental kind of games, the no, you can't do this, you can't do this. You just got to, like, as you said, you just got to get back up and accept the hit and keep going.
That's right. All right, now I'd like to talk about your family, your support system.
Mm.
Does your family or children follow any part of this diet with you?
No, they are supportive, but they don't do this. And part of the reason is we live in Japan, and my wife's Japanese, and I think as a Japanese person, it's very, very difficult to do something like this, to do a strict diet like this. And the reason is culturally, it's very difficult to refuse food or say, "I'm not eating that," or something like that, right? You could never go to someone's house and someone offers you a bowl of rice and say, "No, sorry, it looks very nice, but I'm not gonna eat that rice," or something like that. Or you couldn't just leave it either. You can't just kind of mess around with it and leave it on the plate and go, "I'm not so hungry," and all this kind of thing. And I guess Korean culture is probably very similar. So I think this we won't find all that many carnivores from Japan or Korea.
I come from an Italian family, and it sounds just like the Italians. There is no, "I'm not hungry." There is no, "I don't want that." So, now that you described that difficulty, how do you navigate family meals or social gatherings with your diet?
That was something I worried about up front, and honestly, that's probably part of the reason I've been on and off keto in recent years. For me now, I've got the kind of the stable blood sugar and the calmness and the carnivore zen and all that kind of thing that once I've eaten, I don't need to worry about that. Like I can go out to a social event and I can just sit there with a sparkling water or something and just enjoy the social aspect of being out with people. As far as if I'm going out to an event or something, yeah, I because I don't have that nagging kind of you got to eat something to fit in, you got to drink something, you've got to be holding a can of beer in front of you or something like that. I just don't get that anymore. That took time. And that's one of those falling off the wagon things, you know. If I hadn't kept trying, I mean, there was big gaps where I kind of beat myself up in between where I have fallen off the wagon. But if I hadn't kept trying and kept getting back on the wagon, then I'd still be in the same position.
It's the same for me. I liken all that to the demon inside me and how powerful his voice is. And he's
Mm.
gotten quieter and quieter over the years. And I'm 5.5 years into this now. I'm a little over 12 months of doing like really sticking to it. And I still see improvements. I'm better now than I was 2 months ago. It just continues to get better.
Yeah.
Okay, what about some other passions and interests outside of diet and health? What are some of your other passions?
I grew up very passionate about computers, but you know, I'm a computer programmer and a self-taught computer programmer, so that's always something I've been interested in, anything related to technology. But outside of that kind of stuff, one of my passions is actually public speaking. I really enjoy public speaking, and I always hated it in the past. Like there was nothing worse than having to stand in front of people and put yourself out there and talk, right? But once I got used to it, and I got used to it by actually I was a trainer and had to put myself out there. Once I got used to it, it's something that I really enjoy. And there's nothing better than standing in front of an audience, saying something and getting their reaction and being able to take that reaction and work with it and maybe make them laugh or make them do something that they otherwise wouldn't do, you know. You know, I've had training sessions where I've been able to get very formal, stiff kind of salary men and women, kind of very, very formal business people to be climbing under desks and doing all sorts of weird stuff, you know. So yeah, I really enjoy that.
That sounds great. Would you consider being a guest like you are now a form of public speaking, even though there's no live audience?
In a way, in a way. But yeah, for me, the real the real kind of buzz, I guess, what gives me that dopamine hit, I guess, is standing in front of the live audience.
That's great. All right, now we're going to move into my closing questions. So these are questions that I've been asking all of my guests, and I had been considering revising, changing, but each one of my guests has said that they were great questions and they've given great, great answers. So my first two questions are similar. They're going to be posed from you to your younger self. And the first one is going to be related to diet and mental health or addiction, if you want to put that in there. And the second one, not necessarily related to diet. So, for the first one, what is a piece of advice you'd give to your younger self before you discovered the diet? Something along the lines of how to get through the tough times.
Get outside and do some kind of exercise. Over the years, I've found that the best thing for mental health is move. Get outside and move. There there is nothing better than going for a really, really, really long walk and just giving yourself time to think. Giving yourself time to think and, like, having no distractions, no, no YouTube videos playing in the background, no music, no nothing. Just walk and just completely clear your mind. And I find that it's good for it's good for your mental health generally, but it's also really good if you're struggling with problems, you can solve them by just clearing your mind and not even kind of dwelling on the problem itself. It just happens. It just fixes itself. You just suddenly go, yeah, I can do that. If it's a problem at work, if it's a problem at home, if it's anything, just clear your mind, go for a really long walk, and you'll fix it.
I absolutely love that answer for several reasons. The first answer is anybody can walk. You're not saying to go lift weights or play with kettlebells
Mm,
or like I sprint. You're not asking somebody to do something. You just go for a walk. One of the reasons I like that is because I'm big into walking, and what I've been doing for a very long time is walking first thing in the morning. And with the way the
mm,
sun is now, I'm getting up at 5:30. It's still dark out. Like a day like today, I was walking in the dark, but I don't care. I've also transitioned to a barefoot thing in the last couple of years, so I'm outside at 5:30 in the morning and I'm walking barefoot around my neighborhood. When I have days where I'm working nights, I'm free in the morning. I'm going not far from me is the bay, and there's parks that are right on the water, and I can walk around by the bay and I can catch the sunrise. I love walking. It does a lot for me. And
mm,
like you said, no distractions. I don't bring my phone. I don't even have it. I used to listen to podcasts or whatever, but no distractions, just walking and thinking. And that's when I do a lot of good brainstorming. That's where I like this morning, I was rehearsing in my head how the show was going to go and my intro and all that kind of thing. And it's very, very valuable. It's medicinal, and it makes
mm.
me feel
So yeah, I often hear people say that they have their best ideas when they're in the shower. And I think it follows the same kind of thing, right? Because when you're in the shower, you haven't got your phone on you. You haven't, you're not listening to anything. You're just kind of, enjoying the warm water and that kind of thing, right? I think walking is like that on steroids.
there's actually some science behind that where they do brain scans on people, and they shows, certain regions of your brain that light up as you walk or after you're walking. It's also very good for blood sugar. I've had times where I wore continuous glucose monitors, and even after a big meal, you go for a walk, your sugar always will come down when you walk.
Right. Interesting.
All right, so my second question is also posed to your younger self, but not necessarily related to diet or mental health. If you could just go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Stop worrying about what people think, right? Because as you get older, you realize, number one, no one actually cares, right? You're worrying about what they think, but what they're worrying about, what they've got to do today or whatever, or the argument they had with a friend last night or whatever it is, right? Stop worrying about what people think because they're not thinking about you. And the second part of that is even if they were thinking about you, what is it going to matter in a year's time? What's it gonna matter in 10 years' time? It's not gonna matter at all. You're not gonna even care about that person anymore. So, yeah, stop worrying about what people think.
That's great. It's taken me 47 years of my life to realize that.
Yeah, me too. I still struggle with it today, but,
Of course.
I'm just better at looking critically at my thoughts and going, "Yeah, we're going down this path again."
Part of my issues or my symptoms when I'm not well is that I care way too much about my appearance. I'm very insecure. I had spoke about this on my show with you that I'll constantly wanted to change my appearance. I think that everybody's focused on me and they don't like what they see because I don't like what I see. But the way that I feel, I now I don't care anymore. And I'm the silly guy walking around the neighborhood with no shoes on. It's like 50 degrees out. It's dark. People probably think I'm a bum or like, like I'm homeless or something, but I do not care. I do it because I enjoy it and I don't care what people think.
Mm, yeah, it's the best way to live, I think.
It is. So this is going to bring us to my signature question now. So this is a question that encourages guests to share a broader, more philosophical insight or a life lesson that ties into your experience with your ketogenic lifestyle and hopefully provides something meaningful and potentially new even after our in-depth interview. This is what I call my fat-fueled philosophy. What is one powerful piece of fat-fueled philosophy, a life lesson, or a mantra that you've embraced on your ketogenic journey and that you think could inspire our listeners?
I think the most important lesson that ties into my diet that I've learned is that we are not special. We think we're special in that we think we need to have balance. We need to have whatever that means. We need to have balance. We need to have variety. We need to have, we need to be eating all the time. And the most important thing is to remember we're just another species of animal. And why should we be so different that we have pharmaceutical deficiencies, that we have processed carbohydrate deficiencies? It just makes no sense. Um, and when you really sit back and look at it, it's like no species in the animal kingdom is constantly sick and constantly taking tablets and constantly thinking about, I'm sick of this food. And it's only us. And the only explanation for that is we've trained ourselves into this because it satisfies a profit motive. And you take profit, take marketing out of everything, and we're just the same as any other animal. We just need to eat a diet which makes us feel good. I think, yeah, I think that's the the thing I've learned.
That was amazing. I'm giving you a round of applause for that one. I love it.
Cheers.
I feel like I am talking to myself, and when my wife hears this, she's gonna be triggered by this because 'cause I'm saying this all I talk all the time about what is appropriate for our bodies, and I think that's why beef works so well for so many people because we evolved on ruminant meat. And I'm always talking about, well, if we were out in the wild, when the sun goes down, we wouldn't have bright lights on in the house and the TV on. And that's why our daughter's having trouble going to sleep at night. And I'm always relating everything back to science and nature. And we're domesticated, but we are just human beings. So we got to figure out what is appropriate for our bodies. I love that answer. Thank you.
No worries. And just to follow on from that, I think the other signal that, we're not living naturally is look at a domesticated dog. Like, from as animals, the only animals that really get sick are dogs, right? Because they're living the same way we do.
That's a great point. And they're dying too young and they get cancer and tumors and congestive heart failure and they're overweight. And most of these dogs are eating what we eat, or at least to some extent, they're getting scraps and they get sick just like we do. All
Hmm.
right. So I'm assuming that you haven't seen any of my shows at this point, right?
Full ones, no.
Good. All right. That's good. So you haven't seen what I do at the end.
No.
That's good. You're going to enjoy this.
Are we gonna sing a song?
Oh, I did it again. I hit my keyboard and I did that last time too. So my tagline for the show is right here, right? It's fix yourself with fat. So hang on a sec. Let me get my get up on. I have my tenets in life, and one of them is sunshine and body movement, which you talked about taking an outside walk. But another one of my tenets is to have fun and enjoy life. So I like to
Uh-huh.
be a little bit goofy. So what I do is I say, fix yourself with fat, like that. And
Uh-huh.
I've been asking each one of my guests to take us out by doing the tagline in their own unique and enthusiastic way. You think you can do that for us, Dave?
Sure.
All right.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Fix yourself with fat.
All right. That was perfect. Perfect. Good job. That was great. So my idea is to put a compilation together of all my guests doing that tagline when I have a bunch of them. And then I'll put a video out of
Okay.
everybody saying that.
Nice.
You did an awesome job. That was such a great interview. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Cheers.